My ex-wife sent me one text 8 years after the divorce, and I read it 47 times before I could reply. Because 11 words from a woman I hadn't spoken to in 8 years had just cracked open the one grave we'd both spent a decade learning to walk past. I'm Wesley Calloway. I build furniture for a living in a small Ohio town, alone, in a barn that smells like cedar and sawdust, and for 8 years, 4 months, and 11 days, I had told myself I was fine. My ex-wife, Nora, was a hospice nurse 2 towns over. The kind of woman who sat with the dying for a living, who needed to speak grief out loud to survive it. But me. I went silent when we lost everything that mattered. I buried it. I built tables and bed frames, instead of saying the words that might have saved us. And when the divorce was final, we shook hands in a courthouse parking lot like strangers who'd just closed on a house. 8 years of silence. Not one word. But then, on an ordinary Tuesday, with sawdust still on my forearms, her name lit up my phone. And the text wasn't about us, wasn't an apology, wasn't a goodbye. It was about a tree. A single sugar maple we'd planted together in the worst spring of our lives. And someone was coming to cut it down on Saturday. So why did one text about a tree make a grown man read 11 words 47 times before his hands stopped shaking? What did we plant under that maple that neither of us could bear to lose twice? And why, after 8 years of pretending I was fine, was I already reaching for my truck keys before I'd even typed what time Saturday? Let me tell you about that tree. The phone buzzed against the workbench, and I almost didn't pick it up. My hands were rough with sawdust, the rocking chair half sanded in front of me. But I saw the name on the screen, and the whole world went quiet. Nora. Just her first name. I'd never changed it. 16 years that contact had sat in my phone, and I'd never once had the heart to delete it. I read what she wrote. It's me. The Tildens are taking down Lily's maple on Saturday. I couldn't let it happen without telling you. Nora. And just like that, I wasn't standing in my barn anymore. I was kneeling in the wet spring dirt behind a little house on Sycamore Street 9 years ago, digging a hole with my bare hands because I couldn't find the shovel and I didn't want to wait. Nora stood beside me holding a sapling no taller than her knee. She held it the way you hold something alive. The way she'd held our daughter for 4 days before the machines went quiet. Lily, 4 days old. Born with my ears and her mother's nose and a full head of dark hair the nurses kept touching like they couldn't believe it. We didn't have a grave to visit. We couldn't bear one. So we planted a tree instead, and we called it Lily, and for one afternoon, one single afternoon in the worst spring of our lives, we weren't two people drowning in separate oceans. We were her parents, planting something that would keep growing after we couldn't. Then we lost each other anyway. She needed to talk. I went silent. She said Lily's name every single day, and every day I walked out to the barn and built another table. Because if I opened my mouth, I was afraid the grief would come out and never stop. So I said nothing. For months I said nothing. And a woman can only reach for a man who keeps turning to wood for so long before her arms get tired. She filed. I didn't fight it. Fighting would have meant talking, and I'd forgotten how. I read her text again, then again. I sat down hard on my stool and read it again. And somewhere around the 10th time, I understood it wasn't the tree that had my hands shaking. It was 4 words buried in the middle. I couldn't let it happen. After 8 years of silence, Nora still thought of me as someone who deserved to know. Someone with a right to that tree. Someone who was still, in some buried corner of her heart, Lily's father. 47 times. I read it 47 times before my thumb stopped shaking enough to type. I know. What time Saturday? 3 dots. Then gone. Then back. 9. I'm going at 8 to beg them. I don't know what I think I can do. I looked at the rocking chair. At the orderly little life I'd built. Monday I cut, Tuesday I sand, Wednesday I stain, every week the same, safe, small, silent. 8 years of pretending the smallness was peace. I typed, I'll be there at 7:30, a long pause. Long enough that I went back to sanding just to keep my hands from flying apart. Then one word came through. Whiz, just my name. And I swear to you, I felt that single word in my chest like a hand pressing flat against a door I'd nailed shut years ago. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark on Grover Road and let myself think about her for the first time in years. The way she laughed like it surprised her. The way she stole only the left side of my sweatshirts. And I thought about Saturday, and the tree, and the fact that I'd be standing in the backyard of a house that used to be ours, beside a woman who used to be my whole world, fighting for the last living thing our daughter ever touched. Saturday came gray and cold. I got there at 7:24. I parked across the street from the little house on Sycamore, the one I'd sold the winter after the divorce because I couldn't breathe inside it anymore. New shutters, a swing set in the yard that wasn't ours, strangers living inside the walls where my daughter had a nursery we never got to fill. And there at the curb was a silver car I didn't recognize. The driver's door opened, and after 8 years, 4 months, and 11 days, Nora Quinn stepped out into the cold morning light and turned and looked straight at me. For a moment, neither of us moved. She looked older, but in the way good wood ages, not the way it rots. There were soft lines at the corners of her eyes now, the kind you only get from 1,000 smiles and 1,000 cries. Her dark hair was shorter, brushing her jaw. She wore a gray coat I didn't recognize and held a travel mug of coffee with both hands like she was trying to keep them warm, or keep them still. 8 years, and my whole body still knew her before my brain caught up. "Hi," she said, one word. Her breath fogged in the cold air between us. "Hi," I said back. That was it. That was all 8 years came down to. Two people standing on opposite curbs of a street that used to be home, saying hi like the word might break if we leaned on it too hard. She crossed first. I'll always remember that. She crossed the street toward me, careful, like she was walking on ice, and when she got close enough I could smell her. The same hand lotion, lavender, and something clean underneath, and my throat closed so fast it scared me. "You came," she said. "You knew I would." She nodded, looked down at her coffee. "I hoped." We stood there in the gray morning, two strangers who'd once shared a toothbrush holder, and the silence stretched so wide I thought one of us might fall into it. Then she lifted her eyes to the house. "It's smaller than I remember," she whispered. "Everything is," I said. The new shutters were navy blue. There was a wreath on the door that didn't belong to us, and a tricycle tipped over on its side in the driveway, and a strange dog barking somewhere inside. All the soft proof of a family living in the rooms where we'd planned our own. And there, beyond the skate, in the backyard we could just see the edge of, stood the maple. It was beautiful. It had grown so much taller than I'd let myself imagine. 20 feet, maybe more, with a trunk as thick as my arm and branches that reached up and out like it was trying to hold the whole sky. The leaves had just started to turn at the tips, gold bleeding into the green, because it was that in-between week of autumn, when everything is about to change and doesn't know it yet. Nora made a sound. A sound, the kind you make when something you buried claws its way back up your chest. "She'd be 9, she said quietly. "Lily, she'd be 9 this year. It's almost I couldn't answer. I'd done that math too, every birthday. "I know," I said. It was all I had. A light came on in the kitchen window. Nora wiped her eyes fast with the back of her hand and straightened up like a nurse going into a patient's room. Chin lifted, shoulders set. "Okay," she said. "Let me do the talking. I've been rehearsing all night." "Nora, I sit with grieving people for a living, Wes. I can do this. I can find the right words." She always could. That was the whole tragedy of us, wasn't it? She always had the words, and I never did. We walked up the path together. She knocked. The man who opened the door was about my age, with a flannel shirt and tired eyes and a kid maybe 4 years old clinging to his leg, peeking out at us. A dog scrambled behind him. He looked at the two of us standing on his porch at 7:30 in the morning, and his face went careful. "Can I help you, Mr. Tilden?" Nora said. "I'm Nora. I called you. About the tree." His shoulders dropped an inch. Not angry, just tired. "Right. The tree." He glanced back at the kitchen, then stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door mostly shut behind him so the kid couldn't hear. "Look, I'm real sorry for whatever this tree means to you folks, I am. But the storm we had last month tore up half the root plate on the north side. My arborist says it's a hazard. One more big wind and it comes down. And it comes down right on my daughter's bedroom." He pointed up, and my heart stopped, because the window he pointed to, the second-floor window the maple leaned toward, was the nursery. It was Lily's nursery. The room we'd painted pale yellow, because we didn't want to know if she was a boy or a girl. The room with the rocking chair I'd built, the first chair I ever made, the one we never got to use. Now there was a little girl sleeping in it. A living little girl. And our tree was leaning over her bed like a threat. I felt the whole thing tilt. The grief and the unfairness and the strange, awful symmetry of it. That the tree we planted for our lost daughter might fall and hurt someone else's living one. Nora felt it too. I watched all her rehearsed words drain right out of her. "Oh," she breathed. Russ Tilden softened. "I really am sorry. The crew's coming at 9. I wish there was something. What if we moved it?" The words were out of my mouth before I knew I'd opened it. Both of them turned to look at me. Nora's eyes went wide. After all these years, she still wasn't used to me being the one who spoke. "Moved it," Russ repeated. "Transplanted," I said. The word came up out of somewhere deep, out of 20 years of working with wood. of understanding how living things hold themselves together. It's a sugar maple, 9 years old. That's young. The root ball's big, but it's not impossible. You get a tree spade in here, dig it out whole, truck it somewhere with room. It comes off your property, off your insurance, away from your daughter's window, and it lives. Russ rubbed the back of his neck. I don't know, man. That sounds expensive. And the arborist said, I'll pay for it, I said. All of it today. Right now. You don't lift a finger and you don't spend a dime, and that hazard is gone by sundown. Wes. Nora's voice cracked on my name. Where would it even go? I looked at her. My place, I said. I've got 2 acres on Grover Road and a barn and nothing growing in the whole back field. It would have room. It would have all the room in the world. She stared at me, and something moved behind her eyes, something I hadn't seen in 8 years and 4 months. Hope. Raw, terrified hope. Russ looked between us, and I think for the first time he understood that he wasn't dealing with 2 strangers fighting over landscaping. He was standing in front of 2 people who'd lost a child and named a tree after her. And that tree was the last living thing they had left of her. He let out a long breath. Let me talk to my wife, he said. The door closed. And Nora and I stood alone on the porch of a house that used to be ours. And she turned to me, and she said the thing that broke me wide open. You spoke up, she whispered. Wiz, for 8 years I begged you to just say something. And you just spoke up for her. Just like that. I didn't have an answer. I didn't have a good one anyway. So I told her the truth. I've had a lot of years to figure out what I should have said back then, I said. My voice came out rough. Turns out it's easy to find the words when you're not afraid of what comes out behind them. Her eyes filled. She looked away fast, out at the yard, at the gold-tipped tree. I used to hate you, she said. Quiet. For going quiet. I thought it meant you didn't love her enough to grieve her. I thought it meant you didn't love me. Nora. It took me 4 years of sitting with dying people and their families to understand, she went on, that everybody grieves in their own language. Some people talk. Some people scream. Her voice broke. Some people build a bed frame at 2 in the morning because it's the only prayer they know how to say. I had to grip the porch railing. Because she was right, that bed frame. I'd built it the month after we lost Lily, sanded it until my fingers bled, and I never knew why. I never knew why until this exact second on this exact porch, hearing my ex-wife name the thing I'd never been able to name myself. It was a prayer. Every joint I cut, every board I sanded smooth. It was the only way I knew how to say I loved her. I loved her, I loved her, and I don't know how to live in a world that doesn't have her in it. I still have it, I said. The bed frame, it's in my barn. I never sold it. I never figured out who it was for. She looked at me with tears running down her face and the strangest, saddest little smile. It was for her, Nora said. It was always for her. The door opened. We both jumped, wiped our faces, turned. Russ stood there with a woman beside him now, his wife, holding the little girl on her hip. The little girl had dark hair and sleepy eyes, and she looked at us with the open curiosity only small children have. The wife, Diane, she said her name was, looked at the 2 of us, at our red eyes and our wrecked faces, and whatever Russ had told her, it had landed. My husband says you want to move the tree, she said, to your own land. Yes, ma'am, I said. She looked up at the maple, then back at us. Then down at her daughter, who reached out one small hand toward the tree like she wanted to touch the leaves. My Sophie loves that tree, Diane said softly. She talks to it. Says it waves at her in the wind. She swallowed. I cried when Russ told me we had to take it down. I didn't even know why a tree could make me cry like that. She paused. I guess now I know it had a name. Nobody said anything for a long moment. The morning was so quiet I could hear the leaves rustling. Move it, Diane said. Save it. We'll help however we can. Then she looked at me and her voice dropped. And whoever she was, the little girl your tree is named for, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you lost her. I have built 1,000 things with these hands. Tables that will outlive me. Chairs my customers' grandchildren will sit in. But I have never made anything as good as the silence in that moment, when a stranger looked 2 broken people in the eye and said our daughter's name mattered. Nora reached over without looking and grabbed my hand. She just grabbed it, the way she used to. Her fingers cold from the coffee mug, sliding between mine like 8 years had never happened, like no time had passed at all, like we were still 2 kids planting a sapling in the rain. I held on. God help me, I held on like the world was ending. And then everything started moving fast. I called every contact I had. By 8:15 I'd reached Dale Mercer, who runs the tree service 2 counties over, and owed me a favor for the workbench I'd built him at cost. By 8:40 his truck was rumbling down Sycamore Street with a hydraulic tree spade on the back. The the big steel blades folded up like a closed flower. The original crew, the one Russ had hired to cut it down, showed up at 9, took one look at what was happening, shrugged, and left. They got paid either way. And then came the part I'll never forget as long as I live. Dale positioned the spade around the base of the maple. The 4 curved steel blades lowered into the soil, slow and groaning, sinking deep into the earth around the roots. A wide, gentle circle, like cupped hands reaching down to lift something precious out of the ground. Nora stood beside me with both hands pressed over her mouth. "It's going to be okay," I said. I didn't know if it was true, I just knew I needed it to be. The hydraulics whined. The blades closed under the root ball. And then, with a sound like the earth itself exhaling, the maple came free. Roots and soil and all, the whole tree lifted up into the gray morning air, swaying gently suspended. 9 years of growing, the last living thing our daughter ever touched, hanging between the earth and the sky. And Nora made that sound again, that same sound from the curb. But this time she turned and she pressed her face into my shoulder. And she sobbed. Really sobbed. The way she'd needed to sob in front of me for 8 years. And never could because I'd never stood still long enough to let her. I wrapped both arms around her. I held my ex-wife in the front yard of the house that used to be ours, with our daughter's tree swinging in the air above us. And for the first time in 8 years, 4 months and 11 days, I didn't go silent. "I've got you," I said into her hair. "I've got the tree, and I've got you, and I'm not letting go of either one." She pulled back and looked up at me, mascara everywhere, more beautiful than the day I married her. "Promise me it'll live," she said. "Whiz. Promise me the tree will live." And that was the one promise I was terrified to make. Because the truth I knew as a man who'd worked with living wood for 20 years, was that transplanting a tree, that age, that size, in one morning in shock, was a gamble. Sometimes they take root in their new home and thrive for 100 years. And sometimes the shock is just too much. Sometimes you move them, and no matter how careful you were, no matter how much you loved them, they quietly die anyway over the following spring. I looked at her hopeful, breaking face, and I didn't know yet if I was about to save the last piece of our daughter or kill it twice. We planted her again at dusk. Dale's truck backed slow across my field on Grover Road, the maples swaying on the flatbed against an orange October sky. I'd spent the whole afternoon digging the new hole by hand, wide and deep, the way you're supposed to, the way I dug the first one with my bare hands 9 years before. Nora worked beside me the entire time. She didn't have to. She had scrubs in her car and a shift the next morning 2 towns over. But she rolled up the sleeves of that gray coat, and she got down in the dirt with me. And we lowered our daughter's tree into Ohio, ground together for the second time in our lives. We packed the soil around the roots with our hands. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. For the first time, the silence between us wasn't a wall. It was a room we were both finally standing in. When it was done, we stepped back. The maples stood there in the last light, leaves shivering, in the middle of my empty field where there'd been nothing growing for 8 years. "It looks lonely," Nora whispered. "It's not," I said. "It's home." She looked at me when I said that word, home, and I watched her decide whether to believe it. Then the leaves started to fall. Within 2 weeks, every gold leaf had let go and drifted down, and the branches went bare and black against the gray November sky. And that's when the fear set in. Because a transplanted tree drops its leaves, whether it's living or dying, and there is no way on God's earth to tell the difference until spring. So we waited. And here's the part I never expected. While we waited for the tree, we found each other again. It started small. She texted to ask how it looked. I sent her a photo. She texted back. I sent another the next day. Then she drove out one Sunday just to check on it, and ended up staying 4 hours at my kitchen table. And we talked. God, we talked. We talked the way we should have talked 9 years ago when it might have saved us. I told her about the nights I sat in my truck in the dark, not going anywhere. She told me about the first patient she ever lost as a hospice nurse, a man named Walter who held her hand and said, "Tell my wife I wasn't scared," and how she went out to her car afterward and cried for an hour and finally understood me. Understood what it was to love someone so much that the only way to survive losing them is to go quiet and carry it alone. "I divorced you because you wouldn't grieve out loud," she said that night, both her hands wrapped around a coffee mug at my table. "And it took me 8 years to realize you were grieving the whole time. I just couldn't hear the language you were speaking." "I should have learned yours," I said. Maybe, she gave me a small sad smile. Maybe we were just 2 kids who got hit by the worst thing in the world before we knew how to hold each other through it. She started coming every Sunday. then Sundays and Wednesdays. Then she stopped pretending it was about the tree. By February, I'd hung mistletoe I forgot to take down at Christmas, and one snowy night she caught me looking at it and laughed that full, surprised laugh I'd missed for 8 years. And she crossed my kitchen and kissed me. Soft, careful, like she was afraid I might disappear. I didn't disappear. I'd done enough disappearing for one lifetime. But the tree, oh, the tree haunted us all winter. Every visit, we'd walk out to it in our coats and stand in the snow and look at those bare black branches and try to read them like tea leaves. Was that twig too brittle? Was that bark too gray? I'd scrape a fingernail against a small branch looking for green underneath, and some days I'd find a little, and some days I wasn't sure, and Nora would watch my face for the verdict like I was a doctor reading a chart. Then came the morning in late March that nearly broke us both. A storm rolled through overnight, the same kind of storm that had wounded the tree in the first place. I went out at dawn in the freezing mud, and one of the lower branches had cracked clean off in the wind and lay there in the snow, snapped and bare. I picked it up, I scraped it with my nail, brown, dry, dead. I stood in that field at sunrise, holding a dead branch from my daughter's tree, and I felt the whole thing collapse inside me. I'd done it. I'd gambled with the last living piece of lily and I'd lost. I'd killed her tree trying to save it. I called Nora. I could barely get the words out. I think it's dead, I said. Nora, I think I killed it. There's a branch and it's dead. It's dry all the way through. I think the whole thing's. I'm coming, she said. Don't you move. I'm coming right now. She drove 40 minutes in the rain. She found me sitting in the wet field beside the tree, the dead branch across my knees, doing the thing I swore I'd never do again. Going silent, shutting down, the old wall already halfway built back up. But this time she didn't let me. This time she sat down in the freezing mud beside me, in her scrubs, and she took my face in both her cold hands and turned me to look at her. Don't you dare go away from me again, Wesley Calloway, she said. Whatever happens with this tree, you talk to me, you stay. You hear me? I lost you once to silence. I am not losing you to it twice, and I broke. Right there in the mud, I broke open the way I never could 9 years ago. I cried for Lily, for her 4 days. For her dark hair and my ears and the rocking chair she never got to use. For the man I'd been who didn't know how to do anything but build furniture in the dark. I cried until there was nothing left, and Nora held me through every second of it. And she didn't try to fix it, and she didn't let go. When it was over, the sun was up, and that's when she saw it. Her voice changed. Wiz, look, look. I lifted my head. On the branch right above us, the high one, the one reaching toward the morning light, there was a bud. A tiny, swollen, impossible red bud. And another. All along the upper branches, where I'd been too heartbroken that morning to look. Buds, dozens of them, hundreds of them, fat with the green that had been hiding inside that tree all winter long, just waiting. The lower branch had died. But the tree was alive. The tree was coming back. Nora made that sound. The sound from the curb, the sound from the day it lifted into the sky. But this time it wasn't grief. This time it was joy. She grabbed my muddy hand and pressed it against her mouth and laughed and cried at the same time. And I looked up at our daughter's tree, budding red and green against the morning sky. And I understood something I'll carry until the day I die. The branch that broke didn't mean the tree was dying. Sometimes a living thing has to lose a piece of itself in a storm and still find a way to bloom. Just like us, we got married again that fall. Right there in the field under the maple on the first day the leaves turned gold. Small. Just my sister Claire, and Dale who moved the tree, and Russ and Diane and little Sophie Tilden, who insisted on coming because she said she missed the tree that waves. Sophie scattered maple leaves down the aisle instead of flowers. Nora wore a simple dress. I wore my good shirt. And when the time came, I didn't fumble for words the way I used to. I spent 8 years building things in the dark because I didn't know how to say what was in my heart, I told her, holding both her hands under the tree. But I know now. So here it is. You are the language I should have learned. You are the prayer I was trying to build. And I am going to spend the rest of my life saying it out loud, every single day, so you never have to wonder again. She was crying too hard to say her vows. She just nodded and laughed and kissed me. And everybody clapped, and somewhere up in the branches the wind moved through the leaves like the tree was clapping too. That night, after everyone left, I led her into the barn. The bed frame was there. The one I'd built in the dark 9 years before and never understood. The first thing I ever made out of grief. I'd finished it that summer. Sanded it smooth, oiled the wood until it glowed, and into the headboard I'd carved one word, deep and careful, the most important thing I've ever made with these hands. Lily. It was always for her, I said, but it's for us now too. So we never sleep a single night without her name in the room. Nora ran her fingers over the carved letters, and she looked up at me, and she said the words that I'll hear in my heart for the rest of my life. She brought us back, she whispered. Even gone, she brought us all the way back home. The maple is 15 feet from my back porch now. It's been 4 springs. It blooms gold every October, and it's grown so tall the branches almost touch the roof. And on summer evenings, Nora and I sit beneath it in 2 chairs I built, and we talk, out loud, every day. And we say our daughter's name like it's the most natural thing in the world. Because it is. We lost a child, we lost a marriage, we lost 8 years to silence. But we found each other again under the same tree that held our worst day. Because one of us was finally brave enough to send 11 words across 8 years of silence, and the other was finally brave enough to drop everything and answer. So let me ask you something, and really sit with it before you scroll away. Is there someone out there? Someone you loved? Someone you lost? Someone you let go because the grief or the pride or the silence got too loud? Who is only one message away? One text, 11 words, 8 years of distance. What would happen if, tonight, you were brave enough to finally send it? And what are you so afraid of that you haven't already?